Greetings. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another broadcast, the context of white supremacy, justice, and Gus T Renegade in for another program. Hopefully you will find the broadcast to be constructive. As we say consistently, we do not want anyone who is concerned about racism, white supremacy, wasting time. We want folks getting helpful information that they can use to solve problems and improve their quality of life. If this program is not measuring up, please invest your time and energy elsewhere. There are tons of other programs. You could be making your own program, writing your own books, your own essays, films, anything. Do not waste time. I want to hop right to it. Excuse me. Broadcast today. As I said, I told you all, if I get my MacBook Pro, I'm going to be more attentive and making an effort to be looking at different news sites online and just trying to be more up on current events because it'll be easier because I'll have the technology to do so. And I have followed through on that, just patrolling CNN and some other websites during the whole, Eddie Long tragedy. And I checked out CNN and saw the report by our guest for today's program and contacted him. He was willing to come and speak with us, and there you go. He is a sociologist, associate professor at Tulane University in Louisiana. The essay that he authored, that's at CNN actually. If you're listening at Blog Talk Radio, you can click. The title of that essay is Why Black Church Culture Rejects Homosexuality. You can just click that and it'll take you right to CNN so you can read the entire report, which we'll be talking about today. He is also the author of several books. His latest publication, Erotic Revolutionaries, Black Women, Sexuality, and Popular Culture. Really interesting work, and hopefully we'll have a little time to get into that as well. Our guest for today's program, Professor Shayne Lee. Professor Lee, are you with us?
Oh, yes. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, sir. We appreciate it. I know you could be doing a lot of other things with your Sunday afternoon. I guess for folks, if they didn't get an opportunity to read that essay or if they haven't picked up some of your works, could you tell them a little bit about the work that you do at Tulane?
Sure. I'm a sociology professor. I teach classes like sociology of religion, classes on culture, and my favorite class that I taught was a class on The Wire, the HBO TV show. I taught a class that dealt with race, the city, politics, media, based on the Wire. So as a sociologist, I study people, so it takes me in various capacities of human interaction. And right now, my latest work deals with pop culture and sexuality. But generally, my first two books dealt with, my first book, T.D. Jakes, America's New Preacher, was a book that shows contemporary changes in the black church. And my second book, Holy Mavericks, Evangelical Innovators in the Spiritual Marketplace, I co-authored with a historian, and we looked at celebrity preachers and we tried to explain their appeal.
Interesting. I think Bishop Eddie Long would qualify as a celebrity preacher. Now infamous, but I think we'll get into that. I guess for folks, if they haven't seen you, you are a black male. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. This broadcast, the C.O.W.S context of white supremacy, I have unfortunately concluded that we are in a global system of racism, white supremacy. I use those two terms interchangeably, and the definition that I use for both terms is as follows. A global system of people who classify themselves as white and are dedicated to abusing and or subjugating everyone in the known universe whom they classify as not white. Do you believe that such a system exists, and do you think that definition is accurate?
It's a very provocative definition, and I think as a sociologist, I guess I look at the empirical world, and when I see the empirical world and the way institutions are set up, and who runs those institutions, empirically there's a lot to that definition, and that the most powerful institutions are run by non-blacks and in many ways benefit from legacies of inequality, racist legacies, and structures, the ways in which we interact with history, the way we interact with current institutions, socialization, education, all of those things factor in to give some bite to your definition. But I also think that that power is more complex than, because I think there's also a sexist legacy, and my research is starting to see the ways in which patriarchy and how that hovers over women. And in many ways, black men participate in those kind of structures too. So it's power is definitely something that is tricky, is complex, is pervasive, and I feel that there are ways in which African Americans and women are subjected to powerful institutions.
I would definitely concur that females are mistreated on a constant basis. You have lots of people worldwide who are mistreated for a variety of reasons. However, I want to be very explicit. I do believe that everything is second to the global empire of white supremacy. And I just want to be clear, if you feel that such a system, white supremacy, does exist worldwide, and if the definition that I gave is accurate. If you don't agree, that's fine, but I want to make sure I'm clear on that before we hop into your material.
I totally agree that, globally speaking, that white power structures rule and often dominate black bodies. So in that sense, empirically, the way I see the work is, it gets a more philosophical definition, and I operate better thinking about things sociologically. And sociologically speaking, I can't deny that definition. That people participate, whether intentionally or unintentionally, in power structures that are dominated by non-black bodies and that dominate black bodies. And so that's why I find it difficult to disagree with your provocative definition.
I'm looking forward. I want to start, I guess, with the Eddie Long piece, if that's acceptable,
Sure.
And then move to Erotic Revolutionaries. Before I hop to the Eddie Long piece, my co-host, Justice, she's here. She is a non-white female. I think she will have some questions as well as we roll, and I want to see if she has any questions to start us off. Justice, if you're there and you have any questions for Professor Shayne Lee, please go right ahead. I believe your microphone should be open.
Constructive for non-white people.
We didn't quite hear the first part of your question. That was my error. If you could read that from the very beginning, that would be great, Justice. My apologies.
Okay. What have you done and what do you do that is constructive for non-white people?
Personally? Is the question, what have I done? Let me make sure I heard your question. What have I done and what do I do for the empowerment of non-white people?
That is constructive for non-white people.
Oh, that is constructive. As an educator, I think what I do personally is try to enlighten people in general. In particular, I'm considered like one of the few black faculty on my campus, and so I take a major role in mentoring our black students. And what I try to do is show them how systems work, show them how to compete within some of the systems of dominations that you allude to, and also to enlighten their minds to elevate themselves to the point that they can transcend many of the forces of domination that kind of hold people down. So whether it's in their career or whether it's just in their own personal lives and how they live, the way they've been socialized to believe, I think as an educator I play a role in building people up and empowering people. And I get a lot of opportunities at Tulane to do that with African Americans and non-whites in general. So that's something, when you are a black professor, that it's expected of you. But I would like to do more. I don't feel I do enough. I don't feel I could ever do enough. And if we didn't have such pressure to research, I think I would do more in the community in New Orleans. But I every once in a while I go into the high schools and the elementary schools to speak to students, and I'm active with social workers in any way I can. But I definitely feel like I could do more and need to do more.
How is your book constructive in replacing white supremacy with justice?
Which book?
Erotic Revolutionaries.
That book, I would say that book is more geared at replacing patriarchy. As I alluded to earlier, I see that as also a global force and also something pervasive in which whites and non-whites participate. And so I would say that book is more geared towards exposing the ways in which male-dominated systems create double standards as far as erotic pleasure, as far as erotic potentialities, the ability of a woman to express herself. And I look into pop culture for what I call sexual scripts, and that's just a sociological way of saying sexual ways of thinking that empower women to a more equitable kind of self-expression. So I feel that I probably do more to fight patriarchy in my work. I'm also working on a book on black clergy women now. And that, again, the black church functions in many ways as a system of patriarchy that I feel needs to be challenged. And I think it's important for men to challenge those systems, just like it's important for whites like Tim Wise to challenge racist systems that are dominated by non-blacks. So I'm quite excited to take on patriarchy in any way I can.
What do you mean by equitable?
I feel because the world has, in many ways, and just to borrow from Karl Marx talked about how culture, many times the things we take for granted have been instituted by people who control the means of production. That's just a complicated way of saying people in power impose their will in subtle ways and hegemonic ways on other people. And through culture is a powerful way. The things we take for granted, the way we live, it's a powerful way to reproduce inequality. In the area of sexuality, I feel that women have been they've been controlled, and they control themselves with understandings of sex that I don't feel are equitable, meaning I don't feel are equal. I don't feel that they have the same room as men have to be sexual agents, to express themselves sexually, to have erotic curiosity. I feel men who exhibit this are rewarded in many ways culturally. Women are labeled a slut or something problematic. And so I feel that there has to come a point in society where we fight for a more equal space, erotic space. And I don't think black feminists have done a good job of arguing that, because they've spent most of their time fighting other forms of sexual oppression, the hypersexualization of black female bodies, and the way they've been exploited in many ways. And I think that's important work. But I think what gets lost is the ways in which we have these middle-class puritanical standards that we put on female bodies, especially black female bodies, and the ways we allow men to be sexual agents without condemnation. So I think more equitable means that men and women can see themselves as free sexual beings and not face penalty.
Just for your information, I'm 11 years old. Please make an attempt to explain things at a level that I can understand.
Oh, I'm sorry. You sound so mature and composed. I didn't know you were 11. Wow, I'm impressed.
What do you mean by patriarchy?
The fact that for so many years men have controlled the way the world works. And that control has led to men shaping the world in ways that benefit men. And now I feel it's time for men to look at those ways and reevaluate them and think, well, maybe we set up the world in ways that aren't always equal. So just like I feel that black people should stand up for their rights and to have more freedoms and to have more power, I feel that women should stand up for their rights and have more freedom and power. And I think that just like I feel that non-blacks should support blacks in their desire to have more power and to enjoy more resources and control more institutions, I think men like myself should encourage and participate in helping women to gain more power in society.
That will be all for now.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Talking to such a smart 11-year-old. I'm so impressed.
She is outstanding. Justice right here, context of white supremacy. Okay. The unfortunate incident with Bishop Eddie Long in Atlanta, Georgia. I read your piece, and when I contacted you, you indicated that you had made, I think, 3 trips to CNN over last weekend, the last weekend in September, and then capped that off by appearing on Good Morning America on Monday, September 27th. I guess, have you been on CNN prior to last weekend or Good Morning America?
Never.
Wow. Wow. Why do you think they were so interested in your viewpoint on what happened with Bishop Long?
I think it's because my first book, T.D. Jakes, America's New Preacher, I mentioned Bishop Long. Myself and Jonathan Walton, a scholar at Harvard, we're the only 2 that really is written about in our scholarship, Eddie Long, and have tried to create a context for understanding how ministries like his flourish and how ministries like his or T.D. Jakes or many other people, how they represent maybe what I call a new kind of black church. And so, and why they are controversial to maybe some of the more old guard members, and why they are able to draw a lot of Gen X people. So since I've been interested in that, and since Eddie Long fits into this kind of new black church leadership, I've been cited, since the book came out in 2005, the book of T.D. Jakes, I've been cited in pretty much every newspaper and every story, almost every story on black religion. I just had never been on TV viewing those thoughts. And I think once I wrote the CNN.com piece, CNN and ABC contacted me because maybe they wanted my idea is to reach a broader audience to provide context.
Context, very important. Wow, okay. Your piece specifically, why black church culture rejects homosexuality. I guess for folks who, if they're listening to this program and they have not read that piece, which again, it is linked in the description for this program. If you're listening at Blog Talk Radio, you can just click that title and it'll take you right to CNN so you can read it. But if you could give, I guess, a brief synopsis of what you articulate, that would be great.
And first, I should say I didn't come up with the title. I've done op-eds before, and I do know that you don't get to write the title. Usually the medium that you're writing it for gets to choose the title. So I don't know if I would have chose that title, but the gist of the article, though, is I'm basically trying to say to some of my more liberal friends my liberal scholars or liberal people who take it for granted that homosexuality should be embraced by Christians and in the church, and that this is, a travesty that it isn't. I try to say, hey, as long as black folk are still theologically conservative in their thinking, they're going to continue to foster an environment that's not very friendly to homosexuality as a lifestyle. And what that's going to do is, I begin with an example of somebody that, through my research that I met, and showing, the pain that this person suffered, the existential struggle of being gay and being in the church. And the theme of it is that struggle is going to remain as long as black Christians are Bible affirming and take a literal interpretation of the Bible.
Now, that's really interesting that you did not create the title for this piece. Very interesting. Do you think the title accurately reflects what you wrote in the piece?
I think it's accurate. I think the piece is a little bit more slick and sophisticated in how I make the discussion flow than the title suggests, which is to me kind of bland and kind of in your face with black church culture. But I guess it's accurate in the sense that I'm saying black churches are Bible generally, or predominantly Bible affirming and conservative in the ways in which they interpret the Bible, meaning that they hold it as authoritative. And in doing that, I mentioned Romans chapter 1, alluding to that was Paul. Paul presented homosexuality as perversion, and so as depravity. And I argue that as long as black churches continue to listen to Paul as if his words came from God, then there's going to be little chance of fostering a more free environment for same-sex couples or people who experience same-sex eroticism. That's going to be preached against, and it's going to be kind of a hostile environment, which is the context for Eddie Long and his situation, because I feel that if these were women, his career wouldn't be in jeopardy. But I think since these were young men at the time, his career will be over, toast, if there's any strength to these allegations. And I feel that the black church culture that embraces Paul's condemnation of homosexuality is what's going to rule Eddie Long's demise if these allegations are true.
Very interesting. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this because I read your piece, and actually CNN, they have a piece that just came out on Friday from Mr. L.Z. Granderson, Why No Prayers for Bishop Long's Accusers. And I'm reading from what's on CNN. It says that Mr. Granderson is a 2010 nominee and a 2009 winner of the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation. What I've seen in the way that the Bishop Long story has been reported is that a significant number of the stories are not necessarily focused on Bishop Long is accused of pedophilia, sexual misconduct. What I've seen is the black church is not accepting of homosexuality. I guess I have two questions around that. Number one, has that been your observation in the way that this incident has been reported?
Yes, and to be fair, I've participated in that, in many of the articles, the AJC article, Christian Science Monitor, several other articles, and focusing on that, and some of my comments on CNN when I was on. So, yeah, I have definitely participated in focusing on that. But I guess it's because they were 16. The allegations claim that they were 16 and over, and in Atlanta, it's considered that's the age of consent, so that's probably why it's not been branded as pedophilia.
Very interesting, and this is going to pop back up when we get to Erotic Revolutionaries. This will pop back up about those the age of sexual consent and the social construction of how we view sex and what gets viewed as rape or what gets viewed as pedophilia and what gets viewed as normal, healthy sexual activity. But yeah, that has been very interesting to me in the way that this story has been reported in terms of just the Black church is not accepting of homosexual behavior. And you said yourself you participated in some of this.
I think that's the major story.
I'm sorry?
I think that's the major story.
What's the major story?
The fact the Black church culture that's resistant against homosexuality, because now Eddie Long's ministry is about to explode. One of the biggest churches, one of the most prominent preachers is potentially on his way down because the church is completely intolerant of homosexuality from its leaders. And so that's why, to me, that's the big part of the story, the fact that one of the most prominent preachers is on his way to the poorhouse.
Interesting. Very interesting. My perspective on this is that I think it is a sad indicator of just how bad things are when someone is accused, a 55-year-old is accused of engaging in sexual intercourse with a 16-year-old, and people are not furious about this and saying this is totally incorrect. People are upset and saying, why aren't Black people more accepting of homosexual activity? I feel like that should be the main thing that we're upset about, and I think that should be the case even if these were females. It shouldn't be any different. I would be furious if my 16-year-old daughter were engaging in sexual intercourse with a 55-year-old male. I would be furious. I would be outraged. That person should be under the jail, which is the exact same way I think it should be if it's a male, female, totally incorrect. If Eddie Long was a female and the accusers were males, totally incorrect. I would be livid, and I just find it very interesting that that's not the primary focus of the story, the incorrectness of this activity, not Black people should be more accepting of homosexual behavior, and specifically the Black church. And this is a consistent theme that I have seen in the media going all the way back to California and the vote that they had on gay marriage. Again, it was Black people are not accepting of homosexual activity, which I think is real interesting. Have you observed that similar theme?
Definitely. But I guess I think there's some truth to that, though. I think that when you look at the national data, I think in the CNN article I quoted the Pew Research Center's recent study, Blacks tend to be more theologically conservative, tend to be more Bible-affirming, and tend to be less likely to accept homosexuality as a lifestyle. So that kind of translates into when, like in California, when more Blacks came out to vote for Obama, it means more Bible-affirming people are going to come out, and it probably is going to cause that initiative to be able to be instilled against gay marriages. So I think I do agree with you that it shouldn't just be the focus. But with Long in particular, though, a guy who spent so much time brilliantly preaching against homosexuality, there is sort of a certain dynamism to the fact that now his ministry is about to crumble for those same kind of erotic urges that he's been kind of shooting down. So I think that's what kind of gives the story kind of a national bite to it, kind of intrigue. And journalists, their job is to create intrigue, to deal with national issues. A male pastor, it's so common that male pastors abuse young women that it's almost not a story, which is sad. But like powerful men sleeping with women, whether it's the church, whether it's in any facet, any institution, it's such a normal, such a regular thing that it's not a national story when it happens all the time. Unless it's President Clinton with his intern or something like that.
I would assert that is social engineering, an excellent illustration of social engineering. What gets reported and what does not get reported. The fact that if, a pastor commits sexual abuse against 16-year-old 16-year-old females or 15-year-old females, 17-year-old females, that's not really a story. I would say that is social engineering, that people don't really perceive anything to be that incorrect about that. And conversely, if it is a story that a 55-year-old male commits sexual molestation against a 16-year-old male, that is a story. And especially if the story is not, whoa, this is really incorrect. The story is, how ironic is this? And the black church is not accepting of homosexuality. I think that's brilliant illustration of social engineering and how the media can provide context for how we think about sex, which, again, big theme. We're going to come back to this. I'm just highlighting this so you all keep it in mind when we get to Erotic Revolutionaries. I guess this is important for the context of this discussion. What is your sexual classification, if I may ask?
Heterosexual.
Okay, curious. I would like to, I guess, transition to Erotic Revolutionaries, but I want to double check to see if Justice, if you have any questions you would like to ask Professor Shayne Lee. Justice, your mic is open. Please go right ahead.
How do you think your book is going to help black females understand racism, white supremacy? The Erotic Revolutionaries book.
Indirectly, I think it does, because a large part of the problem when it comes to black women and sexuality has come from slavery. Because the brutal treatment by the slave master to the female slave, the rape, the abuse, the mistreatment. And that caused, in reaction to that history, and then later on, after slavery was over, then you have the media, TV, movies, and the ways in which they misportray black women. And these are predominantly white people, white men in power. They have caused a lot of black women to be defensive about their sexuality, and I think they created a serious problem. And I feel that my book helps to affirm black women as people who believe in sex and are allowed to feel proud of their sexuality, but at the same time don't have to be defensive now as if they're dominated by what white men think of them. Now they can think of what they think of themselves and express themselves the way they want to express themselves. So I think indirectly, by fighting patriarchy, many of these patriarchal systems that were created by white men in power in the United States, the book undermines white supremacy.
I don't really understand the response. Could you please clarify?
Sure. The way that slavery set in motion a lot of unfair things for black women, I feel that my book will help black women now learn new ways to look at themselves, not as the way they looked at themselves back in slavery, but now as free women who can control their own bodies, in a nutshell.
How is learning about Lil Kim going to help me, a black female, help me replace white supremacy with justice? That's
a great question. And most scholars would answer, it's not. Most professors, I should say, they're going to say, it's not, so don't do it. I feel Lil Kim can help you because you're 11 years old, and I feel that Lil Kim is, in some ways, a powerful woman who offers a level of freedom that when you get older and you become sexually active, I think Lil Kim offers advice that could be helpful to you and empowering to you. And so I think in doing that, I think that is one of the best ways that she can help young women like yourself become stronger and more free. I think in her songs, I think she promotes a certain level of independence and strength for black women in challenging the ways in which black men and other men try to control them. I think that's very empowering. I also think there's some things about her message that aren't empowering, that are harmful. So I definitely don't think she's a saint. I wouldn't call her Maya Angelou, but I do think that there are aspects when you get older that you can learn from her that can really help you become an independent person. But as an 11-year-old, I think you might want to wait another decade before you start listening to her stuff.
What power?
Power in the sense of control over your body, over who and what people can say about you and how that influences you, over the way you want to dress, the way you want to portray yourself. She introduces a kind of freedom that causes a lot of women not to have to listen to men in making decisions about their body, but listen to themselves. And I think that's important.
What kind of freedom?
If I had a daughter, I would want her in some ways to be like Lil Kim. I'd want her to grow up to be strong. I wouldn't want her to grow up to experience some of the bad things that have happened to her. But the fact that she's learned from those things and become stronger, I'd want kind of my daughter to grow up to have a certain degree of independence and strong-mindedness so that men can't control her. And I think Lil Kim and others have a lot to offer in that regard.
What did Lil Kim do that was constructive? That was constructive. I feel hip-hop is controlled by men. And so when there are videos out there, it's men controlling women's bodies. Lil Kim comes along, and it gives us a break from that. And now it's a woman controlling male bodies. I think we need more Lil Kims out there so that women wouldn't just have to see music from the perspective of men, that they could also see things from the perspective of women. Right now, rap or hip-hop is dominated by men. And so I feel that Lil Kim has been very constructive in introducing a certain kind of female power to her songs that works to balance out the male power we see when men do their hip-hop songs. Did you answer the how? I missed the how. Did you answer the how?
Yes, in her songs, by offering messages of female empowerment, by controlling male bodies in her videos. Instead of having just women dancing around half naked, she has men doing that. That's her way to say, hey, women, we want to see the same thing that you want to see, and you're not going to show it to us, so we have to be in control too. So I think by being a strong woman, by having strong lyrics, and by creating images of powerful women controlling men, I think that's very constructive.
How is men half naked constructive?
It's very constructive because right now the way the hip-hop, I feel that sexuality is not something dirty. I don't feel that, I like hip-hop. And as an adult, I like the fact that I can watch a video and see sexy bodies. I happen to like seeing the women in the videos. And I happen to think one of the nice things about hip-hop is for, it goes against the ways in which our country
has these kind of, I'm thinking of a word that you can understand, these really shy ways of living. And I think hip-hop kind of says, no, we're sexual beings, we can be free, and I like that. But the problem is it's all from the male perspective. So each video creates a fantasy world that just shows things from men's perspective. And Lil Kim comes along, and Trina and Missy Elliott and other female rappers, they say, hey, we have fantasies too as women. And some of our fantasies have sexy male bodies, just like your fantasies have sexy female bodies. And so it can't just be one-sided. So I guess there's a choice that we have. We could either say, get rid of all sexiness in hip-hop, make it like an after-school special, make it rated G, and everybody cover up. We can do that, or we can say, well, sex in its right context is okay. We can celebrate sex, but let's do it in an equal way where we just don't make one gender the focus of the sex. And I feel, in my opinion, it's better to allow people to express themselves sexually. We just need more women to have equitable space to do that.
What does music have to do with what you're talking about?
Music has a big role in culture. And the way we think, the way we live, the way we operate in the world is so much influenced by music. I think my father was just so much influenced by Marvin Gaye. Just like myself, growing up, I was influenced by Biggie, Tupac. DMX was one of my favorite rappers. And, I mean, it has this strong ability to impact the way you think, how you respond, your emotions. And so, and it shows you possibilities that maybe you didn't even know you had. It can help you fantasize. It can help you be free. So I think music plays a powerful role in our culture, and that's why I think it's so important for the music to reflect a broad range of people's interests, not just one dominant group's interests.
Okay, go ahead, Gus. That'll be all for now.
Context of white supremacy. As I said, I want to transition to the book Erotic Revolutionaries, Black Women, Sexuality, and Popular Culture. I did forget one aspect with Bishop Eddie Long. It has been my observation that comparisons often reveal a lot about how things work, how people perceptions that people have.
Sure.
Same area of the world, also in Georgia. Marcus Dixon. Do you remember the incident that happened with Marcus Dixon in Georgia, 2004?
No, I don't.
Wow. Marcus Dixon, he's a black male. He's now I guess he has a few dollars. He's a tight end, a defensive end for the New York Football Jets. In 2004, he was accused of sexual misconduct. At the time, he was 18. He was accused of sexual misconduct with a white female who was 15 3/4. He was convicted of sexual misconduct.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know he was a football player. Okay, I know what you're talking about. And he went to jail.
Yes.
Yeah, that was sad.
Yeah, was in many ways. I'm just comparing because both of those incidents happened in Georgia. I'm just comparing the treatment of Marcus Dixon with the coverage and treatment of Eddie Long. The little bit that you know about that story and what you know about Eddie Long, what comparisons do you see between those two? Similarities, differences?
That's a good question. I think the main difference is the position of power. Like, I remember the story now that you reminded me, and I remember talking to some of my friends about it, and there was this anger that we had in that this could have been any of us. Because when you're that age, there's really not that much of a difference, and many of us, when we were like 17, dated girls who were 15, or that was just like kind of normal. So it was almost there was a greater sense of compassion for him than there is for Long, who people feel possibly might be taking advantage of younger men. So I definitely think Bishop Long is not getting good media coverage, and I think the media coverage, although it wasn't great because many of us were outraged at the whole case, it wasn't as bad as it was as it is for Bishop Long. Because there was a sense of, wow, this guy was, they're so close in age, and was this law really meant for this? And this guy, should we consider him a criminal? This is crazy. There was more room for ambiguity with the Dixon case than there was with Long, which is like, how could you, almost, if it's true.
Interesting. I want listeners, because I know some folks might not remember that or didn't hear anything about it at all. 2004 is, eons ago now. But folks, I would say kind of keep that in mind, because that case also was in the state of Georgia, and he was convicted. Now, he is out. As I said, he's doing, pretty well. He's a football player in the NFL right now, but Marcus Dixon, I mean. But I would say, keep that in mind. To my knowledge, Bishop Long has still not been formally charged with anything. Is that accurate to your knowledge?
Yes, and he's not going to be charged with any criminal. This is all going to be civil. So that's another big difference between this and the Dixon case. There aren't going to be any criminal charges as of now. Okay, now, so if there's another investigation, if the FBI gets involved, something like that, that's different. But it's because all of the claims are after age 16. And so, like the age of consent, that's why it has to be civil.
I would say that right there, big difference already. Mr. Dixon went to jail, and they have the white woman, I believe her name was Christy Brown. She was 15 3/4, and I know at least one of the black males that has made these allegations against Bishop Long was 16. So we're talking about a couple months difference here. Criminal charges? No criminal charges.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Isn't it? Context of white supremacy. But okay, Erotic Revolutionaries, and I think a lot of this will connect with what you write about in Erotic Revolutionaries. You write, and this is from the introduction. Anybody, if you have the book or you're going to get the book, this is from the introduction on page 17. You write that Erotic Revolutionaries seeks to inject a little humping and pumping into sociological analysis. I guess you already answered Justice's question around this book, but I'll make sure I ask to be clear. Your purpose in writing this book was
to challenge the assumption that pop culture is all bad for black women, and to show that in fact there are many empowering voices in pop culture that can help feminists in their quest to kind of challenge patriarchy, in particular the kind of cultural norms that cultural double standards that say that men can have as much sex as they want, women can't, that men could be sort of autonomous sexual agents and sort of express themselves as free sexual beings in ways that women will be judged as sluts for doing. And so black feminist thought has been so defensive, it's been so entrenched in its battle against fighting the objectification of black female bodies that it's missed an important message to say, okay, while we don't like black bodies being objectified and exploited in ways, we also don't want to create a cultural system where black bodies have to be chased in ways that male bodies don't. And I think that's they call it the politics of respectability. It's this middle class black middle class set of assumptions about the way that black female bodies are supposed to operate. And at some point, I felt we needed to challenge these bourgeois assumptions of what it means to be a lady and allow for a more autonomous sexual expression for black women. And since black feminists aren't doing this, I thought that black pop culture could be a useful reservoir of these sort of what I call these scripts, these empowering scripts for women. And so I guess it's twofold. One is to show that pop culture can help us with our scholarship, and another is to challenge the patriarchal double standards that say that women can't be sexual beings the way men can.
On page 14, this is the introduction that I'm reading from, page 14 in the introduction. I think, or I guess you can tell me whether or not this is an accurate synopsis of what this book is about. You say that I deem my subjects erotic revolutionaries because they effectively wage war against the politics of respectability and challenge traditional scripts that offer men greater space to indulge in a fuller range of sexual expressiveness, a fuller range of sexual expressivities. Some of my subjects bask in the ecstasies and mysteries of sexual desire. Others create safe spaces for sexual discourse and confront patriarchal myths. All of my subjects are prototypes of what I call the new feminist chick. Strong, smart, edgy, ambitious, socially conscious, independent women who implicitly and explicitly encourage new generations towards sexual agency, exploration, and empowerment. I guess I have a montage of photographs that are accompanying the description for this broadcast, and I want, in case folks are confused looking at these photographs, wig by and going, what does this have to do with the conversation? If you could connect the dots, what do Lil Kim, Wanda Sykes, Serena Williams, Monique, Josephine Baker, Dorothy Dandridge, these are just some of the folks, I don't want to read them all, but what do all these folks have to do with erotic revolutionaries?
I'll take one, Wanda Sykes. Wanda Sykes, she's a comedian, and I feel that black female comics, more than any other people in pop culture, exhibit this kind of proactive sexuality. The black female comic talks about sex, talks about her body as lusting for men. She jokes around about sleeping with presidents. I think Wanda has joked around about Obama and his sex life. Cheryl Underwood joked around about sleeping with Bush or Clinton. That's kind of Monique has joked around also about that. So it is a safe space for women because the comic stage is something, you know you're not serious, it's fantasy world, but it's a safe place to portray the black female body as a sexual body, as one with longings. And someone like Wanda Sykes and someone like Monique and other comics do a really good job of putting men on display. See, male comics and men and pop culture in general are always talking about the female body as and putting it under scrutiny. Now, the comic stage for women gives them a chance to talk about men and their sexual dysfunctions, the ways in which penis sizes, body types. So now the male body is put under scrutiny on display in ways that are very common for the female body, and I think that goes to what I feel is needed in society. Rather than not talking about sex at all and making everything an after-school special like some feminists would suggest, I say we continue to be sexual agents, just let's do it in a way where everyone has voice and where it's not just dominated by men. And I think Wanda Sykes, the last thing I'll say about this is Wanda Sykes, in her last performance in D.C., she mentioned her partner. She has a same-sex partner. And she's one of the first black women of reputable status to make a public reference to a same-sex partner. And she went throughout her whole routine talking about her wife. And I thought that was something very important as far as discourse in order for society to be more free. Because not only do I think sexism is something that should be challenged. I think heterosexism is something that should be challenged. And I think Erotic Revolutionaries, they have the kind of energy and power to challenge these systems of domination in creative ways, through humor and other ways.
Wow. I'm reading from chapter 8 here. Said I got to ask him to explain this for our audience here, because you already, when you were talking about Lil Kim, you said I don't want to say she's Maya Angelou, and then in chapter 8 of the book, when you're talking about a lot of the black female stand-up comics, this is chapter 8. You said that talking about Wanda Sykes here, there are few, if any, public arenas outside of the comedic stage that offer black women an opportunity to brag about their skill at masturbation, announce their fantasy cravings for minors, chastise their kids for being cock blockers, assess penis sizes and function, publicize sexual fantasies about powerful politicians, or chat about the vicissitudes of everyday life shared with one's same-sex spouse. It is quite possible that the next great American prophetic figure in the vein of Martin Luther King Jr. to attack oppressive systems of inequality, in this case, sexual stratification and homophobia, is not a preacher, but a black female comic. And I said, wow, did he just compare Wanda Sykes to Martin Luther King Jr.?
Definitely. Because I think what she did, I think what King did in a March on Washington and many of his speeches, and the ways in which he introduced a new kind of discourse, a free discourse, and challenged these structures of racism, is very similar to what Wanda Sykes does when she, from her pulpit, so to speak, affirms same-sex marriage. I think, because I do think that there needs to be, the same way there was a civil rights movement, there needs to be a movement in order to challenge heterosexism in society. I think homosexuals do face a great deal of oppression, and I think female comics like Wanda Sykes do much to challenge that. And so it does sound kind of hyperbolic, but there's a sense in which I think that people like Wanda Sykes are heroic, in the same way I see Martin Luther King as heroic.
Very interesting. I know the folks that called in, I'm real curious to see if they have any questions around that. I'm hopping around a little bit in the book as well. You also wrote, and this is from the introduction. So people, if you have the book, there are Roman numerals for the introduction. So when I do the page numbers and I say introduction, just keep that in mind. So from the introduction, you were talking about the book Black Sexualities, probing powers, passions, practices, and policies. And this is from page 11 in the introduction. And you said that this book and many so-called feminists, that they overlook the potential for black female sex workers to offer empowering models for black female sexuality. And that really struck me. I said, wow, I really got to ask him to break that down. And I have an audio aid with me, because the same day that I read that, someone posted on my Facebook page a song that was pretty much about black female sex workers, and it might be exactly what you're writing about. I'm just going to play like 30 seconds of it so you can get a feel for it and then get your response. And you can tell, because it might not be related, so you can tell me if you think it's related and if this is an example of black female sex workers potentially offering an empowering model for black female sexuality. Hip-hop song, I'll just give the name of the group. The name of the group is First Lady, which is very interesting, seeing as Michelle Obama is the current First Lady. But I'll play, like I said, 30 seconds of the song. It is explicit, so anybody out there, if you have tender ears, cover your ears right now. Giving you warning. Cover your ears for 30 seconds, and then we'll get Professor Lee's response.
I'm selling pussy, ain't got a real hoe. I'm selling pussy, ain't got a real hoe. I'm selling pussy, I'm selling pussy, I'm selling pussy, ain't got a real hoe. They say I do too much, I don't do enough. They say I make their head hurt, it don't hurt enough. They say I'm putting on, I say I'm taking off. Ain't got a real, I fuck your balls. Face down, ass up, and that's.
And the name of the group is First Lady, which I think is just real important considering Michelle Obama, the current First Lady. But is that a model of black female sex workers potentially offering an empowering model for black female sexuality?
I couldn't hear the hook there. So can you tell me like the basic hook, what they were saying?
The name of the song is Selling P. I'll leave it at that. And the hook is, I'm selling P, I ain't got a rap. That's the hook of the song. I'm selling P, I ain't got a rap.
Gotcha. To go back to that quote, I criticized the book because it's a great book. It's a new anthology on black sexuality. It's a groundbreaking book. And I presented it as an example to show that black scholarship has done a great job of showing the ways in which black bodies are oppressed sexually by racist systems. And that book is an example of it. And as you know, when it deals with sexuality, it's always from the point of view of black bodies as victims. And I said there's not one chapter in that entire book that dealt with female sexual agency from an empowered kind of perspective. It was all, if you're black, you're somehow being oppressed. And then I said the only article that dealt with sort of sex workers dealt with it from a victim perspective, completely viewing anybody who does any kind of sex work from the ways in which they're victimized. And I think that's problematic because I think there are women who are victimized as sex workers, and then there are women who do it because they enjoy sex and they are free about their sexuality. And there are things in which there are ways in which our puritanical society has conditioned us to become squeamish at female sexy bodies. There are ways that maybe a sex worker can challenge as this kind of middle-class, bourgeois, puritanical approach to sex that dominates our country. I think sex workers can introduce, in some ways, a more mature view of sexual pleasure, a more clinical view of how to gain sexual pleasure, because these are people who know sex, who know bodies, who know anatomy. And the same way I have a chapter on sexperts, women who are sex experts, we call them sexperts. I feel the sex worker is, in a way, a sexpert in that she engages in eroticism as a commodity, and therefore she works hard at her craft. So I do think that there are ways in which women are exploited as sex workers, and I think it's important for us to write about that, and it's important for us to fight against that. But I think we spent all of our time making these women victims, and in looking at them in a condescending way, I think that comes from our puritanical society that views sex as something dirty. And I think there are ways in which we can gain knowledge from them. I just feel that they're more complex than the kind of canned way we present sex workers, when it's a stripper or a prostitute. You just view them from this kind of, oh, woe is me perspective. And so that song, which I couldn't really hear totally, on the one hand, it commodifies sex. It makes it, a saleable commodity. And there's some problematic aspects of that. But on the other hand, I think the fact that you have females expressing themselves sexually in a hip-hop song, to me, in and of itself, is a political act, where female bodies are silenced, traditionally silenced, and it's men offering their outlandish ideas about sex. Now you have women offering their outlandish, hyperbolic, hypersexual kind of understandings of the world. So either we can get rid of all the men and women from offering these exaggerated kind of sexy messages, or we can keep them and just make sure that there are more women giving them. I just don't think it can stay the way it is now with men dominating sexual discourse in hip-hop, pop culture, while women remain basically silent.
So I guess how do you feel this is an improvement? Lil Kim, Monique, Serena Williams, and her very sexualized tennis outfits, Josephine Baker, Beyonce. How is this an improvement for black females in a system dominated by racism, white supremacy?
Oh, I think it's a tremendous, the people you just named, especially Serena, she's a powerful woman. She's proud of her curves. She doesn't want to hide them. She designs her own outfits so she controls her image. So she's a sexual subject. She can be demure one moment. She can be revealing the next moment. She's an athlete. She's strong. She's a strong-minded person. I think she definitely reflects an empowered kind of sexuality, similar to Beyonce, as a woman who can be in control, who can make demands on men, who aren't going to be told what to do, who aren't going to allow men to just exploit them and just control them. I think all of the people you named in various ways, and other women in pop culture like Alexis Tyler, for example, who are traditionally reviewed as outrageous sexual symbols, I think they're an improvement in that they say, hey, I'm a female body, I'm a sexual body, and I want to express myself my way sexually, not the man's way, not the media's way, my way. And so I'm going to control my sexual image. And, yes, sometimes I'm going to exaggerate. Sometimes I'm going to brag. Other times I'm going to regret. But I am the one speaking, and I have voice. And I think by giving young women that kind of voice, that makes them less likely to be exploited by men who think that they're the ones who should control the sexual discourse or control the sexual interaction.
Context of white supremacy. Again, our guest for today's broadcast, associate professor in the Department of Sociology at Tulane University, Professor Shayne Lee. I felt it was very important, I think, in going to evaluate whether it's the song from First Lady or Serena Williams, Lil Kim, even Alexis K. Tyler, who, I know her personally. Context. You begin your book, Erotic Revolutionaries, Chapter 1, and you talk about context, and in particular, the scripting theory. Can you explain that for our audience and how that kind of provides context to understand these behaviors?
Sure. Scripting theory will relate to people because most people know that have either been in a play or a movie or watched a movie. The actor has a script by which they read and act, and that controls what they do. As a sociologist, I believe that we have scripts in the sense, maybe not written down, but these shared understandings of how the world works. And so the way gender works is we have these gender scripts that says, okay, this is what men can do, this is what women can do. Best example, I go to the gym a lot, and when I work out, I wear shorts that are up to my knees or lower because if I wear them shorter, people might make fun of me because they call them Stockton, because they're too tight, blah, blah, blah. That's just, there's a certain script that says that men usually, if you're going to wear shorts, wear them down to your knees. Women, they can wear shorts higher. Another example could be if you say if I want to propose to a woman, I can propose, but the woman can't. Because part of her script as a female is that she has to be proposed to rather than doing the proposal. So culture operates based on these shared understandings of the world, and I argue that many of these shared understandings are traditions that come from centuries of patriarchy, of male domination. And so that we need to kind of reevaluate the ways in which female bodies are subject to domination by men by these scripts. And the rest of the book is, the first chapter is to show you that sexuality in general is something, we think of it as something natural, but in many ways and to engage in the act of sex, you have to have these scripts about what sex is, what an orgasm is, who and what you can have sex with, how long you have sex, what is good sex, what is bad sex. All of these things are derived from scripts, unshared understandings of certain interactions.
Very interesting. And you also, I think in the book, you talk about the fact that sex is a sociological act. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
Very much so.
Can you elaborate on that for our audience?
Sure. A lot of times people portray sex as something just primal, as something, something you just feel biological, physiological. But I argue that for animals it's more primal. They just kind of do their thing. But human beings, you don't just meet somebody without saying any words and just have sex. There's a certain shared sense of assumptions, sociological assumptions, that guide the interaction. Who introduces himself or herself first? Who can initiate the conversation about sex? How that conversation should work? Who is an adequate sex partner? All of these things, before two individuals can have sex, they have to engage a societal level of scripts on what it means to be a man, a woman, what it means to be a sexual being, what it means to have good sex, when can you have sex, age of consent. All of these things are shaped the way in which humans engage in sex. And so that means sex is very sociological, that society plays a role in establishing the kind of shared assumptions we have that in return guide our sexual experiences.
I totally agree, and it's rare that I bump into folks who view sexual behavior as a sociological act. And I would argue that in a system dominated by racism, white supremacy, that racism, white supremacy is the dominant influence in scripting the sexual conduct of non-white people, black people, and even the conduct of Lil Kim, Wanda Sykes, Serena Williams. Racism, white supremacy is the context in which these events, in which these people and these actions have meaning, in my view. Does that make logical sense to you?
It definitely makes logical sense. In fact, your view is more in line with a scholar I quote in that same chapter, McKinnon, I forgot her first name. She sees structures of society as imposing themselves in powerful ways on the individual choices that we make. And as a sociologist, I'm sympathetic to that belief system, but I also believe that since sexuality is something constructed, the same way that society can impose its will on people, people can embrace alternative scripts because people are free moral agents. So even a black woman whose sexuality was shaped within the context of white supremacy, of patriarchy, can adopt an empowering script that subverts white supremacy, that subverts patriarchy. So I guess I put a little more emphasis on the agency of the individual to challenge those systems, while yet I'm still very, very sympathetic to the ways in which these structures you allude to impose themselves on people. So it's kind of like a dialectical or dynamic process in which we're constantly fighting against these structural forces with our own free will. Kind of like a teenager is fighting against the parent system because they have their emergent new kind of understandings of the world and desires. I think it's kind of similar.
You, just in talking about this scripting, and what I would say is social engineering,
very similar.
One of the dominant forces, in my view, of social engineering with regards to sexual activity, the Kinsey report. You referenced that pretty early in Erotic Revolutionaries, and I felt it was very ironic, not a coincidence, but very ironic, because just this week, a matter of days ago, we just had Dr. Judith Reisman on the program, and she spent a lot of time talking about Alfred Kinsey and that report that came out in the 1940s. He was a pedophile, studied quite a few pedophiles in that report, and in her view, a lot of the devastating consequences of that report. You do cite it in your book. Are you familiar with the fact that Alfred Kinsey, the lead researcher in that study, was a pedophile, and the amount of incorrect sexual conduct that was studied, in quotes, in that bit of research?
No, and I referenced Kinsey very quickly to show the ways in which the sexuality has been dominated by psychologists. So I don't really engage Kinsey that much. And the other reference I have to Kinsey is when I say there's a report that was done. It's the greatest report on sexuality, like the largest report since Kinsey. So I kind of use it as a reference point, but I don't engage it that well because I'm a sociologist, and from what I hear, a lot of the methodology was incorrect. So I don't really I wouldn't base any arguments I make on any findings Kinsey had. And I don't do that in the book.
Yeah, for sure. Just pointing it out, it was referenced quickly, as you said. It's very important. I see it all over everything that we've talked about. The Eddie Long situation. The Kinsey report had a direct impact on the age of consent laws being lowered. In Georgia, they were reduced to 16. Also, homosexual behavior. That was in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual as incorrect pathological behavior. It was changed based on the findings from the Kinsey report. He was a pedophile.
But I would think that's a good thing.
What's a good thing?
Taking away the pejorative classification of homosexuality, and because I think that's one of Kinsey's legacies that I think it's good to show that it's more fluid. Sexuality is not this kind of rigid thing, but that it's something that, it's not something evil if you're homosexual. It's not something dirty. It's not something where you need psychological counseling. Because it used to be listed as an abnormality. And you're right, Kinsey's report played a major role in it being normalized, which I think is a good thing.
As I said, and for folks listening, if you're not familiar, I would highly encourage, if you want some research material on that report, because it is extremely important and people should know more about it. One book, Sexual Sabotage, that was authored by Dr. Judith Reisman. If you're not into reading, they have several documentaries on this. One of them, the Kinsey Syndrome, that's more recent. Another one, Secret History, Kinsey's Pedophile. And if you're really lazy, you can just go back and listen to the program with Dr. Judith Reisman. She was here on Tuesday of this week. Excellent program. She has a lot of information about that. I would not agree. In fact, I would say just based on the fact that those the perception, the social engineering of homosexuality being more acceptable and not viewed as pathological behavior based on the research of a pedophile and a sadomasochist. Kinsey, to report that I've read, he circumcised himself. I would raise serious questions about that. I would raise serious questions about any laws that have been changed around sexual behavior that are based on that study, and that would call into question abortion being legalized. His research was used in that. Homosexuality, perceptions of it being changed and being legalized. His report was used on that. The age of sexual consent being lowered. His report was used on that. I would seriously question all sexual behaviors that have been altered, manipulated, impacted as a result of his work. In sticking with the same theme, and I point this out consistently on the show, I hope people have heard me, pay attention to metaphors. Early in the book, you're talking about how perceptions of sexuality and really anything are very subjective, and the metaphor that you use is Woody Allen. If he had his view about the best spot in New York, you could listen to him, and then you could go to somebody else and get their view on what the best spot in New York is. That really jumped out at me because Woody Allen is a pedophile. He molested and married his stepdaughter. Unless I'm incorrect, is that accurate?
She was, yeah, but she was age of consent, so legally she's not a pedophile.
Again, I believe even when he went to court for the divorce and everything, the judge even chastised him about that. I mean, a lot of white people even looked at that and said, wow, I don't believe this is correct behavior. And she was, let me make sure I'm on my job all the way. I guess, folks, you can think about it, come to your own conclusions. It would kind of be like the Eddie Long situation. Some people feel he doesn't get labeled as a pedophile because the accusers, they were over 16, and that's okay. You can come to your own conclusions about that. And Woody Allen, if you think he should be labeled a pedophile, molesting and marrying his own stepdaughter, who was a non-white female also, I think that's important. I guess I'll double-check with Justice to see if she has some questions, but the last thing I'll hit before I hit the phone lines to see if folks have any questions, related to all this, the Woody Allen, the Kinsey report, you referenced several of the black female comedians, Adele Gibbons and Cheryl Underwood. I used to work at a black comedy club in Atlanta, no less. I met Cheryl Underwood.
Oh, wow.
I met her and talked to her quite a little bit.
She's my ultimate favorite.
Wow. I'll start with Cheryl Underwood. They and I heard a lot. They're not the only ones. When I worked at the Comedy Club, I heard a lot of black comics make jokes about R. Kelly and that whole scandal. It was pretty prominent at the time that I worked at the Comedy Club. But Adele Gibbons, I guess she made a joke saying that she would have sex with Usher. At the time, Usher, I guess, was under 18. She would have sex with Usher and, go to jail happy. Cheryl Underwood, she has an extensive joke where she says that, I'll read a little bit because you quote this in your book. Like many black female comics, Cheryl Underwood boasts about sleeping with younger men and justifies this practice by appealing to gendered biological proclivities. When a woman reaches her sexual peak, how old are we, ladies? 30, 40, 50 years old. When a man reaches his sexual peak, how old is he, ladies? 15, 16, 17 years old. Again, pedophilia. That's right, and I will have sex with a child. She adds that the only problem with sexing a young man is that he still lives at home with his mama, and I'm too old to be sneaking in a bee's house to have sex with her son on a twin bed. She then asks, do you know how hard it is to suck a 17-year-old's penis with your foot up against the door so his strong mother doesn't bust in on you? And when the mother finally busts in, the only thing Cheryl can say to her is, hey, girl, didn't we go to high school together? The irony and absurdity of negotiating sexual space in a 17-year-old's twin bed while fighting off retribution from his mother packs a serious punch into this joke. Do you think it's problematic to have so many comics, male and female, making jokes about R. Kelly and pedophilia in general, particularly when you have things spiral out like Eddie Long?
That's one of my favorite Cheryl Underwood jokes. And I think it demonstrates the comic stage is a special place where normal societal sanctions and rules are transcended for that moment. And so you hear some of the most outrageous things said by comics because the only goal is to be absurd and to make you laugh. That's the number one goal. Even if it means being a racist, even if it means being a sexist, even if it means doing something absurd, if I can shock you into laughing, I've done my job as a comic. And so since it's this safe space, it's been used by men all the time to enact all sorts of crazy fantasies about women, female bodies. And Cheryl Underwood, she's using now her ability to shock. No one would expect close to a middle-aged woman talking about how she wants to have sex with a 17-year-old. It's so outrageous that you're taken by surprise when you hear this, and you're shocked. And it's part of that shock that creates this incredible moment for an adult, because it's definitely an adult audience. It's supposed to be for an adult audience. Part of that transgression, that going against societal norms, is it gives us a reprieve from the kind of
puritanical constraints that guide our lives so much. For those 50 minutes, we can live in a bizarre fantasy world where you hear middle-aged women expressing their lust for, young men, 17 years old. And so I thought that was particularly subversive to patriarchy and the ways in which men are always putting young female bodies on display as the model, as sexy. These 18-year-old perky bodies. That's everywhere. So Cheryl Underwood says, okay, what's good for you is good for me. If you guys can always lust and put up these images of young female bodies as the model that I'm compared to as a woman, Cheryl's like, I can do the same thing. I can put your older body up against this young, strong 17-year-old and lust after this 17-year-old. And it's this kind of bizarre fantasy game that I think is what makes the comic stage such a unique place.
I guess for folks who've been listening to this program for a while, Henry Macko, PhD, he was here in April, and I think he talked quite a bit about the sublimation of sexual deviance, homosexual activity, placing it in entertainment, placing it in areas where people can joke about it and think, this is just funny, this is just harmless fun, that has a big impact, and in my view, has a direct relationship to R. Kelly's, Eddie Long, these sorts of situations. I could be incorrect. Justice, do you have any questions? I'll go to the phone lines after you finish up. Justice, if you have any questions, please go right ahead.
What is heroic about Wanda Sykes and homosexuality? I cannot pronounce it. Homosexuality.
I think it's what's heroic about Wanda Sykes is so many people who are homosexuals have to hide a big part of their identity, and they have to and they feel that they have to live in shame. And so when a powerful woman like Wanda Sykes, who recently had performed in front of Barack Obama, the president, who is considered, one of the most prominent black entertainers in the country, when a woman like her is not ashamed of having a wife, I think that's good for other women. I think it shows them that, hey, if that's your choice to live that way, you don't have to live in shame. And I think it's great for people who identify with her. And not just that, I think it's great for people who don't, because a lot of people respect Wanda Sykes. And so I think there are a lot of people who don't like homosexuals who, if they see Wanda Sykes as one, maybe they'll be considered the same way that there were a lot of people who didn't like black people, but then when they found someone that they did like, it kind of maybe made them change the way they viewed race. So I think it's very heroic to do what people might make fun of you for, to take a stand. And she's doing what a lot of people won't do. She's being open about who she is in ways that invites people to make fun of her.
I heard you say what Eddie Long was accused of doing was legal. Do you think what he did was correct to do? If so, what do you think is correct about it? If not, what do you think is incorrect about it?
Bishop Long, first of all, was married. So I think in engaging, he made a vow to his wife, and I think he broke that vow if he's guilty of doing anything outside of that. So I think that's something to consider. I also think as a leader, a spiritual leader, Bishop Long has a certain amount of power that he might have used in order to satisfy himself in a kind of selfish way. I don't think someone who's 16 years old has a strong enough mind to be able to engage in a relationship with somebody like Eddie Long in a way beyond like a mentor or like a father figure. So I think I think that's an abuse of power. if it's true that he did those things.
How long do you think that racism, white supremacy is going to stay here?
Forever.
Why do you think that?
Because I think there will always be people, powerful people, who will control powerful institutions in ways that are not good for black people. And I don't see that power changing much. So I think that's something we'll just have to deal with forever.
That will be all for now.
Context of white supremacy. Last 30 minutes, I'm just going to check the phone lines and see if folks have any questions. One of my investors is hanging out with us, Shadow. If you have any questions, Shadow, please go right ahead. Your line should be open, sir.
Yes, can you hear me?
If you could speak up a little bit, that would be helpful.
Hello, can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Hi, yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I had a question, Professor, about patriarchy. I'm interested, how do you actually define it, and do you think that's also a system that will always be in effect?
Yeah, I define it as the residual effect of male domination. So any like a world system, if we're going to look at it globally, in which men have been in control for a long time, patriarchy is the residual effect of that control, whether it's institutional, cultural. It takes many different forms. I don't think that means that every man dominates women. I think there are plenty of powerful women and plenty of weak men. But I do think that the overall world system has been in many ways set culturally by norms that support male domination. The same way I would say racially, that a lot of the norms that control the world were set by non-black people for the interests of non-black people. And what was the second part of your question?
I was asking whether or not you thought it would always be that way, and I'd just like to add another question to it.
Sure.
Do you think that homosexual relationships and relationships that have inequality in age are a blow or battle against patriarchy?
No. I don't think neither one of them are. Like the first part, the homosexual relations, I don't think that has a relationship to patriarchy. I think you can be a homosexual and still participate in male domination. I think the homosexual issue deals more with heterosexism. To me, that's the system that dominates and that influences the freedoms of someone who is engaged in same-sex kind of relationship or eroticism. So, and the other part, the pedophile, I don't think undermines patriarchy, but I think it's just an issue of which powerful person or older person exploits which younger person, whether it's gender, it could be in either gender.
Maybe I mistook you, but I thought you had said that you used the Wanda Sykes relationship and the Cheryl Underwood what she joked about as challenges to that, or was I mistaken?
Okay. When you just asked about homosexuality, and I thought you were asking in general, does homosexuality challenge patriarchy?
Yes.
I feel that Wanda Sykes, what she does, not just with her marriage, but what she does in general with her whole career, her discourse, the way she makes fun of men, the way she puts male bodies on display, the way she controls sexual discourse from a female perspective, the way she talks about her wife. I think all of those things, in many ways, undermine patriarchy from the point of view that patriarchy often silences women from speaking sexually and being sexually free agents. So I think from that perspective, I don't think homosexuality in general undermines patriarchy unless it's a specific kind of discourse that challenges
things that hold back women. So in Wanda Sykes' particular case, she happens to be a homosexual woman who, in much of her career, undermines patriarchy. But I definitely think when she talks about her wife, that undermines heterosexism more than it undermines patriarchy. When she says, like, her very first reference to my wife, I thought was a powerful blow to heterosexism. The idea that heterosexuals, that's the norm, and homosexuality is some kind of aberration that should be pathologized. I think Wanda, as a credible person and as a well-respected person, when she referred to her wife, I think she did a lot to undermine heterosexism.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for letting me ask the question, Gus.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Investor in the context of white supremacy. Person who called in from a block number. Did you have a question for Professor Shayne Lee?
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Greetings, Mr. Lee, Gus, and Justice. Actually, I have two questions for you if there's time. The first one's really short. Mr. Lee, I'd like to know, are you presently or have you ever been in a sexual relationship with a white person? If that's not too personal to ask. Just in context.
Okay, well, yeah, I have. In my life, yes, I have.
Okay, and my second question is, you speak of sex workers as women who are powerful or have power. Now, in my area, walk into the grocery store, there are always black female sex workers on the corners, in the grocery stores, in the clothing stores with their behinds hanging out of their clothing while women and children are shopping in the stores. I have talked to some of these women. I have helped some of these women after being raped at knife point by the men who they allow to sodomize them and take money for these men to have sex with them. And I have also been stalked and harassed while fully clothed with my dog walking to the grocery store by the same group of men. Can you help me to see how in any way that empowers them or me or any other black females?
Well, the things you alluded to deal with the serious aspects of oppression that many sex workers face. And it's undeniable. And that's why there's been so much great feminist work done to challenge these sort of conditions. In the context I was mentioning we have all of the work has been done to show sex workers as victims. But, I mean, there could be a woman who owns a website who offers, for free $400 a pop, offers sex, and who feels good about her services, who feels good about what she does, her skill set as a sexual worker, and who can offer a commodity to an individual who feels good about her body and enjoys the act. So I'm saying that I'm arguing that there's a potential for a sex worker to be empowered, but our discourse has been so influenced by this victimology to say that it doesn't even open the theoretical possibility that someone who offers sex as a commodity can be doing it from an empowered vantage point. And I think in our patriarchal society that looks down at sex workers offer a certain kind of sexual power and a certain kind of realism about human beings as sexual subjects that I think we can learn from. I think that the energy that they have, the freedom that they have, many of them have. Now, this is not to say that everyone embodies that power and freedom. Many sex workers are victimized, are beat, but that doesn't mean all of them are. And the current discourse treats them in, I think, a very monolithic way. And I'm just trying to add complexity to it.
Uh, 818, are you good?
Yeah, it's just that I know most women involved in the sex industry have actually been sexually victimized as children in some way, so it's hard for me to imagine them doing what they do from a place of power. I've had conversations with some of them, and they, I hear stuff like, oh, he's not my pimp, he just pays for us to get our hair done, and I'm looking at extensions hanging off of 6 inches of new growth, and she's trolling the store marketing other women to give him money. So I don't know, it's just not equaling power with the facts of the type of conditions that usually lead women into that. I just don't see the possibility in that.
Even if there was abuse at a young age, which is something bad, if a person conquers that and then learns to see their body as something sexual that they want to offer as a commodity and is proud of that, I think that it's our puritanical view of sex that causes us to look at that as dirty. I think that we have a certain script that has influenced the way we look at sex workers or strippers or video dancers, and it comes from this kind of politics of respectability that I think views sex as something dirty. And I think the one thing that many sex workers do is they show that human beings are sexual subjects and have these sexual needs, and many of them sort of embrace the rigors of their craft in fulfilling those needs. And so it doesn't always have to be a dirty, exploitative thing. It could be as simple as a woman running a website and making $3,000 a month doing it. But it sounds like in your perspective, oppression is so much part of the equation that you can't even theoretically imagine a woman who feels good about her body and just engaging in that kind of activity. And I think that's part of the problem, this idea that you come with a presupposition that it's got to be this way, it's got to be oppressed or nothing. I think we miss maybe some other stories that could be that we can learn from them. To me, it's condescending. I think it pretends that we have all the answers to help the sex worker, that they don't have anything to offer us about life, about sexuality, about power.
Hang tight, 818. I just want to check to make sure the other folks, if they have questions or what have you. The person that called in, 5128, did you have a question for Professor Lee?
Yes, I do have a question for the professor. Professor, as a sociologist, in your studies, have you found that it is normal for people or groups to work against their own self-interest?
That does happen. Karl Marx called that false consciousness, when people are distracted from their own self-interest in various ways. So, yes, I do think that that's part of being human. And a lot of times culture plays a role in that. I think women in many ways act against their own self-interest as sexual beings. They police each other in many ways based on the way they dress. They call each other sluts sometimes and look down on other women who are sexually active. To me, that's acting against their own self-interest as free, autonomous sexual beings. So I think culture plays a big role in distracting people sometimes from realizing their true self-interest.
Okay, well, I wanted to take it in another direction, and thank you for that response. But I guess the direction I want to go with it is that earlier in the conversation, you stated that you were a heterosexual male, but it sounds to me that you are anti-heterosexual without wanting to, I guess, defeat or undo heterosexism. I guess I don't understand that.
Heterosexism is the control of the world by heterosexuals. So I am a heterosexual, but I don't feel that homosexuals should be oppressed. Same way I'm a man, and I call myself a feminist. So I'm a man, but yet I'm not a woman, but yet I'm a feminist because I want to participate in challenging patriarchy. I'm a heterosexual, but I want to participate in challenging heterosexism.
Thank you.
Thank you for calling in, sir. Mr. Nero, also an investor here at the Cows, and make sure I plug 818. Visit the blog, ebonynewschannel.blogspot.com, also an investor. Mr. Nero, did you have any questions for Professor Lee?
Greetings, Gus and Justice. Professor Lee, I'm going to try to maintain my composure because I was deeply offended by the comparison of Wanda Sykes with Martin Luther King Jr., a man who gave his life to try to liberate black people in this area of the world. So, Gus, if I get a little rowdy, just mute my phone. I will try to maintain the integrity of this show, but a lot of the things that Professor Lee have stated is simply incorrect. And so my question to you is, sir, you have an 11-year-old child on the line right now. If sex is so liberating, are you saying that this 11-year-old that's on the line right now should be engaging in sex?
No.
Well, why
like
not?
I look at
I'm sorry, sir. Liberating means to set free from, to release from. So you're suggesting that she's in some kind of bondage sexually. So why not let's liberate her right now? Why don't we do that since it's such a great thing? Why does it have to? I'm really not finished with my comment, my question. If it's such a great thing, we should be liberating justice the same way we teach children work ethics, the same way we teach children religion, the same way we teach children how to get along with other people and do all these other things that we desire, that we feel are constructive. So if liberation is such a constructive thing sexually, well, why not have children engage in it? I'm finished.
I enjoy cooking, and I use very sharp knives, and it helps to cut. It helps to do a lot. And I think that a person should be, because knives are dangerous, a person should be a certain age to handle that danger. And I think sexuality is something that, and if you read Erotic Revolutionaries, I have a chapter on Zane, and I talk about how Zane presents sexuality as something simultaneously liberating and something potentially destructive, something that can ruin lives, something that can keep you up all night, something that can even lead to your death. And so since I feel that it's this explosive kind of power that requires a great intellect in engaging, I think a person's mental acuity should be developed at an age to be able to handle such a great responsibility, not only to protect herself or himself, but to protect others from being hurt. Just like you don't want a person to cut themselves with a knife, you don't want a young kid to cut somebody else with that knife. So we keep the knives away from the young kids, I think.
Sir, I was taught how to...
the same way.
Okay. I was taught how to fire a firearm as a child. I was taught how to use a knife as a child. I taught my children the same thing. They never hurt themselves. They never hurt others. See, if it's so good, you can teach people at a very young age.
I wouldn't. I would keep knives away from young kids.
No, I don't have to keep knives from young kids because I have taught children how to use knives appropriately. So I disagree with that. I've been taught how to use a gun as a child. I never shot anybody.
I think this conversation should begin as a child. I think a parent should begin to talk to their children about sexuality and sex. So I agree with you that the conversation can begin early. I just don't think someone young has the mental stability and acuity, like I said earlier, to handle the potential danger from sex, because sex is something potentially explosive. It's something that can liberate. It's something that can destroy. And so,
liberate from what?
Such a powerful force.
Liberate from what? What is holding them down sexually? What are they in bondage to? We use the word liberate.
Liberate in the sense of liberating oneself to be more human. I feel sex is part of being human, and when people hide or suppress that aspect of their humanity, I feel they need liberation. And I think Americans in general are taught so much to be middle class means to, especially for women, to hide your sexuality. Less for men than women. I think women in particular need to be liberated so that they can be more free to be an autonomous sexual creature for whatever way they want to live that way. Right now, you're called a slut when you try to express yourself as a woman, but for a guy, you're okay.
Hang tight, Mr. Nero. We had two other folks that called in. I want to make sure we have time in the last 10 minutes to get their call. 7012. Did you have a question for Professor Lee?
No, I don't have a question. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for listening in, sir. 8888, last four digits, all eights. Did you have a question for Professor Lee? Person who dialed in, last four digits are all eights. Did you have a question for Professor Lee? Oh, okay. I will assume you are just listening. I'll also double check with Justice. Justice, did you have any other questions?
I don't have any questions right now.
Outstanding. Before we wrap up, I'll give Mr. Nero an opportunity. Did you have a final question for Professor Lee?
I suppose so. It sounds to me, sir, really what you're doing is promoting patriarchy. That's really what it sounds like to me. I too transport sex workers, and all the things that 818 discussed, I'll fill in the blanks. The ones that don't get abused, get robbed, get urinated on, get defecated on, get stranded, get abandoned, all kind of sorts of things. And when I transport them from place to place, they certainly don't seem liberated to me. Many of them cannot even properly clean themselves, sir. So I'm trying to figure out where's this liberation piece coming from? What are they liberated from?
Okay, I don't really understand your question. What is the sex worker liberated from?
Please. What is she liberated from?
My comment with the sex worker was to say that all of our energies are to portray them as victims. And I think there's more complexity to what a sex worker is, whether it's a stripper, whether it's a prostitute. I think there's a layer of complexity that gets missed out of the equation when we portray anybody as a victim. Same with African Americans. I mean, a lot of people only focus on the ways in which black people are victims or women are victims. I think that removes layers of complexity when we don't also see the ways in which women are agents, or black people are agents, empowered agents to enact change, to change the world. And so that's why I just think a layer of complexity needs to be added to the discourse, not to just present sex workers as victims. Although many of them are victims, and I think we should continue to highlight the ways that they are victims.
818, did you have a final question, 818?
Yes, he said earlier, Mr. Lee, you said earlier that it seems that I view sex as oppression or something like that. If it's in a relationship between two people who know and love each other and respect each other, I see no oppression in that. I know plenty of married people who are free in sex with their spouses and partners and love them and enjoy that. I just don't see it as something that's healthy, liberating, or empowering between a person that does not know the person they're allowing into their body, where those two people don't care about each other, where you don't even know the psychological background tendencies of that person, whether they have a disease or not. That's my point. It's not a blanket statement about all sex. It's about healthy and responsible sex. And it seems to me in a lot of what you said that you're advocating equal degeneracy, not equal liberty or freedom sexually.
I think it's a bourgeois perspective of sex that you just expressed. I think it's almost from the Victorian era that sex should be limited to sort of the context of love. I think there are many Americans who disagree, who think that sex is something that makes you feel good and it's something you can express with other people and it's something you can commodify. And just like somebody can pay to get a massage, there are many Americans who feel that you can pay to get pleased in certain sexual ways. So I just don't think that the love model should be the dominant discourse to suggest that any sex outside of the loving relationship model is pathological. I think that there are many ways to have sex, and we have to add layers of complexity to these various interactions.
Last 5 minutes. Person who called in 5128. Did you have a question? 5128.
No, actually, Gus, I just wanted to, with your permission, is it okay to plug Dr. Baruti's book at this point?
Which book is it? The Sex Imperative?
Yes, sir.
Please.
I think I just, in listening to the show, All due respect, Professor, as a black heterosexual male myself, married to a woman, and about to have a child, I think your book and your perspective is dangerous. And again, that's my opinion. And I would just implore individuals, if they do decide to check out your work, I think a parallel to your work, or at least a counter response to it, would definitely be the book by another professor of sociology, Dr. Baruti's book, The Sex Imperative. He's been on the show several times, and I think Gus even has a link to the bookstore. So, yeah, just a counter response to this idea that sex for the sake of sex is, liberating. I simply cannot understand that perspective. Thanks, Gus.
Thank you for calling in, sir. I will give our guest the final word on the program. If you have any closing thoughts in response to the callers, or anything you would like us to be on the lookout for, new books or anything, please feel free to share.
I do, especially in response to the caller that just called now. It sounds like a lot of your callers view sex not as something that's socially constructed, but something that has an essence to it. It's something that has a prescription to it. Like, this is how sex is supposed to be. As a sociologist, I see sex as something defined by these scripts. So it sounds to me like a lot of your listeners are troubled because they have a presupposition of what sex is supposed to be, as if sex came from God, or sex is something that is real. I happen to believe that it's something that is part of being human, but not in a prescriptive way, and that we use culture to influence the ways in which we engage in sex. Some of our cultural assumptions reflect, I think, patriarchal assumptions about the way women's bodies should be protected. And so I feel that anything that advocates more freedom for female bodies, black female bodies in particular, is something empowering.
Associate Professor in Sociology, Tulane University in Louisiana, author of Erotic Revolutionaries, Black Women, Sexuality, and Popular Culture. Our guest for today's program, Professor Shayne Lee. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your Sunday afternoon to come and hang out with us. I thoroughly enjoyed the dialogue and your work. He was gracious enough to send me some chapters of the book so that I could prepare for today's program. I hope this has been a constructive use of your afternoon, and we'll
definitely. Thanks so much for having me. This is a great conversation.
I think so as well, sir. We will definitely be on the lookout for more of your articles and continue to do the work, sir.
Oh, thanks. You have a good day.
Thank you, sir. You too. We'll be in touch.
Bye.
Context of white supremacy. I want to make sure you all get a good dose of First Lady. I'm going to open the phone lines up, but I want everyone to get a good dose of First Lady because, hey, this is liberating. This is empowering. So First Lady, Selling P. I'm opening up the phone lines. Please keep the noise down. Phone lines are all open, so if you called in, you are on the line. Just keep the noise down. And this is First Lady. Make sure I get it before they kill my switchboard. Context of white supremacy. That was First Lady. Again, I want to emphasize that really jumped out at me because it was wow. The current First Lady is Michelle Obama. Quite a connection, and I think that song quite relevant for the content of our discussion today and Professor Shayne Lee's work, Erotic Revolutionaries, that is empowering black females with a positive example of sex. First Lady, which you just heard. Don't you all feel empowered, all of the black females that just heard that song? Liberated and empowering.
No, I felt like vomiting when I saw it, and I felt ashamed and saddened.
Well, that's because you have a Victorian view on sex, apparently. You can't
Thank God for Victorian morals.
Right on. I want to make sure I give justice. I wanted to make sure I get Justice's thoughts on the guest because she had outstanding questions today, as usual. But for Justice, question of the day. Question of the day. How long do you think racism, white supremacy is going to be here? His answer, forever. That tells you pretty much all you need to know about his thoughts on racism, white supremacy. Justice, what did you think about what you heard from our guest today?
First of all, that song was long. Well, it wasn't clear, so I didn't really get to listen to the words. So, for the question that I first asked was, what have you done, and what do you do that is constructive for non-white people? It was interesting because, like during the response, he was saying he tries to lighten up, and he's a professor, right? And then so he said he tries to teach how systems work, and yeah, that was interesting. And that his book was more geared. That's what he said also. The response for I was learning about Lil Kim going to help me, a black female, help me replace white supremacy with justice. That was interesting response. I liked how I kept asking questions about Lil Kim because I think when I do that, it spreads out the word. Yeah. That's what I thought about the show.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I'm glad I brought him on the program. These are, black PhD professors. This is not some, average Joe off the street. This gentleman has published 3 books. He was on CNN 3 times last week. He was on Good Morning America a week ago. Has his essays and such published in the Atlanta Journal and Constitution, CNN, the Black Scholarship in the 21st Century. There you go. And real important, he said, I am one of the participants in the Eddie Long story being reported as, man, black people are really not accepting of homosexual behavior. He said, if you go back and listen to the first portion, that was part of his testimony. Very interesting. Very interesting. And I also want to point out for the songs, if you call into the show, it's not as clear on the phone line. But if you go back, the archive is very clear. Any of the songs that are played on the show, they tend to be very clear if you go back and listen on the archive. So hopefully people who are listening after the fact, the song is very clear, so you'll get a good dose of First Lady. All of the other folks that called in, you are on the line. Did you all have anything you wanted to share? Shadow 818, Mr. Nero, I don't know the other gentleman, but everybody, if you called in, you are on the air.
I just want to thank Justice. I think you did an outstanding job. I had many thoughts, and those are exactly the questions you asked him. You rocked today, Justice.
Thank you.
I'm still wondering how Lil Kim is empowering, too. I don't get it.
Yeah, I agree. And thanks to Justice, she gave me the leeway I needed to act a fool.
I don't think you were the fool, Mr. Nero. Did anybody else feel like Mr. Lee and France Cabral may be friends?
Maybe, but this guy seemed even worse.
I could not help.
Oh, go ahead, Whitney.
Tanir, what did you say?
No, I said please continue. When he was about to say something.
Oh. A18, you there?
I'm there. I'm sorry. I had some technical problems. Can you repeat whatever you just said?
No, I just said, go ahead, please continue.
Oh, I'm sorry. I pushed the wrong button and got disconnected somehow. I couldn't help but wondering as he talked and as I kept listening to things he was justifying in his rationale number one, I wondered, had he ever been sexually abused or molested as a child? And two, despite the fact that he said he was a heterosexual, I really, really was suspicious that he may not be.
Me too.
Yeah, so was I.
Me three.
I did not feel like he was very honest about his sexual status.
Well, and I think the other part of that, maybe we should have got him to define the terminology that he was using, because I'm not so sure that when we say marriage and heterosexual, we're probably all talking about the same thing. I mean, given that the whole book involves liberating, it sounds like everybody sexually. I think when an individual makes that leap in logic, I mean, the terms that they use probably aren't the same as what we're talking about, given our Victorian,
bourgeois.
Purity.
Bourgeois, exactly.
And what I was going to say earlier, I still don't know what this means to be liberated sexually. I mean, what does that mean? Once you have sex, you have sex. So what does it mean when they say you're sexually liberated? Liberated from what? What's oppressing you?
As a black female, I kept trying to figure that out too, because what I see the women in the video doing, that's the same type of behavior that was encouraged in slavery and fostered by how black women were treated and how the black female was expected to conduct herself. She was a sexual commodity on a plantation. It's just somebody else got paid for it. So I don't understand how adopting the same behavior and embracing that, what on earth does it liberate or liberate black females from and empower us to? It seems like staying in the same squalor to me. I don't see it garnering any more respect for us. I don't see it making us any more healthy. I don't see it giving us a better view or image of ourselves. I see it doing the opposite, and I see it garnering more disrespect of us. Like I said, when I walk to the store fully clothed in a big coat, boots, with a dog on a leash, and somebody is trolling alongside me, stalking me in a car because there are black prostitutes in the area, though I don't look like one, I fail to see who that empowers, because I honestly feel terrified and threatened when that's going on.
My wife, she says that his book and his perspective sounds quite patriarchal to her. She's sort of shy, but that's why I'm making the comments for her, and I'm not trying to be a patriarch.
That's why I asked him his opinion or what his definition of patriarchal was, because it seemed like almost like what 818 said, he just wanted to get into degeneracy, and that was more, and let's have it on both sides, male and female. I don't know.
Well, see, like when he was saying that Lil Kim parading men or her controlling men's bodies, and why shouldn't men be naked and on display too? Because it's degenerate either way you go to me to exploit people sexually by their bodies. I don't see how either way. Who does it benefit? How is it constructed? To me, it just sounded like equal opportunity degenerate. Because men can be degenerate and exploit women. Women should be able to do it too. Instead of, to me, what's logical, how about not exploiting anyone?
Hey. Hello, Gus?
Yes, sir.
You were about to say something?
I think the codified question from now on in getting at the so-called gay issue is, have you engaged at any point in sexual intercourse with a male, if you're talking to a male, with a female if you're talking with a female. I think that would be the new question. I think a lot of people, you can give them some wiggle room, say, oh, yeah, I'm heterosexual, I just, did whatever, and that doesn't count and all that. That will be the new codified question. Have you engaged in sexual intercourse with a male if you're talking to a male, female talking to a female?
And there's no 3 centimeter rule either.
What?
Can I ask a question to the male callers on the line? If you all were to go to a website like what I saw this weekend, let's say Black Planet, a male friend showed me pictures of a lot of females that had requested him as a friend. If you got, let's say, about 10 friend invitations from different black women, and on each of these females' profiles, they had close-up shots of their breast, maybe in lace bras where you could see their nipples showing through, or pictures of themselves where their face was on the ground, their behinds were in the air, they were wearing thongs and bikinis. Would you see that woman as an empowered woman, or would it communicate some sort of insecurity to you? How would that speak about that woman to you?
In my puritanical perspective, I wouldn't think she was empowered. I would kind of think she was pretty easy, and pretty easy.
It's the same. I think that she would be definitely not empowered. No, easy, confused, promiscuous.
Because the friend that showed it to me, he said that he asked some of the women, why are you putting yourselves out there like that? And they said, if we don't, the men won't pay us any attention. So it seemed to me that even in that, what Mr. Lee would classify as sexual liberation or freedom or empowerment, they were still at the mercy of men because they did it in order to get attention from the men who it seemed still held the power as far as giving a woman attention. It seemed to make them desperate to me.
It's a valid point.
See, I was taught that it's more empowering to you to be as a female to be appreciated for your mind and your character and who you are than for your behind or anything else, because you can find a behind walking down the street anyway. I don't go to school or read books or do anything that I do to develop myself to be appreciated for my body parts or to gain power through that. I feel like it's appealing to the lowest part of you if the best you can do to earn money is to commodify your reproductive organs and your womb.
And 818, the point you brought up about most sex workers being abused and the very opposite of empowered is absolutely true. I don't see how he did research on this. Thank you. Thank you. And I don't see how he could be researching such things and not have seen this or come to that conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Mr. Nero, I'd like to thank you for keeping your head as well as you could. I could hear in your voice you was really angry.
Yeah, I almost lost it there for a moment. So
yeah, I could tell.
Gus hit the mute button right before I said, well, why don't you engage in some of this sex worker behavior? Since you think it's so liberating, why don't you get into it?
He might have. Never know.
I am. Say that again, Justice.
I said, unless you ask him.
Yeah, Gus hit that mute button just in time. And speaking of that, last night I was at an event supposedly for black women. It was hosted by Carol's Bookstore in Sacramento. About 80 to 85 people showed up, and I believe the flyer said black women discussing their issues with black men. And the panel consisted of a 21-year-old, a 25-year-old, maybe the other lady was in her 30s, and one of the other ladies, black females, maybe was in her mid to late 40s. And but the youngest one, the 21-year-old, maybe the 24-year-old, seemed to dominate the panel. And these black women were giving advice along with some of their history. The 21-year-old had gotten married at 18, had a 7-year-old child. She was 21. Her child was 7, and was condoning getting married at a young age, even though she's divorced at 21. The elders in the audience never got a chance to have their voice heard. Consequently, some of the black females left that were in there, or one for sure in her 60s. She said, "Hey, I can't stand any more of this. These are babies up here, and they don't know what they're talking about." So when I finally had a chance to tell them that the problem is, we're getting at each other. This is not the issue. The issue is racism, white supremacy. We need to be focused on them. There were maybe 2 white people in the audience. Immediately, black people came to their rescue. It's not about race. Shut that Negro up. Get him out of here. Do something with him. We got a long way to go. When 21-year-olds are sitting on a panel trying to educate black women about, being in a healthy relationship, and they're divorced with a 7-year-old child.
It was just frustrating for me all around to listen to him talk, because it just didn't seem like he has the perspective of valuing. I'm thinking, where is his value for black people? Just generally seeing how we've always been portrayed as some type of sexual beings or valued for just that. Does he not see that? Like, I hear a lot of females who were out there, like I saw a video online of a female walking around in a pair of shorts with half of her butt cheeks hanging out, and a crowd of horny males following her with cameras recording her. It just doesn't seem empowering to me, because along with that, anything you get from that behavior is going to be because you are allowing yourself to be exploited. I just can't see how the cards are in your hand. Even the prostitutes who may say, "I don't have a pimp," they're still at the control of the men that they have sex with, because those men are stronger and can assault them, kill them, or rape them. And usually if they have a female pimp, she's a lesbian who, plays the part of a male, even at times dressing like one.
I hate to say it.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I hate to say it, but unfortunately, the pimp offers some protection from everybody else other than himself.
Right.
But, he does offer some form of protection.
see, I helped a girl that was raped. She told me she wasn't a prostitute, but I couldn't figure out why else she'd be where she was at the time of night she was. She was in tears because someone had raped her at knife point. When she called the man she claimed was her boyfriend, I could tell he was on the other line not believing her because she's shivering and shaking in tears and just trying to justify him to convince him this really is what happened. When I called him to let him know that she went to the hospital, he couldn't care less. It was like telling him, okay, the keys are in the mailbox. He didn't care. And it clicked later on, I realized that was her pimp. And my goddaughter told me later on, didn't you see the condom in her hand that she was holding? I didn't notice. But, I don't see those men. He's protecting his financial interest. But when it came to her being raped, it didn't bother him.
Pimps are known for their empathy.
During the conversation, and I thought I was listening pretty intently, but did we ever nail down what was considered, I guess, the appropriate age of consent? I mean, was it determined that the 16-year-olds in Georgia were legal based upon Georgia law, or based upon, was there any type of, I guess, benchmark or guideline that we were going by?
The laws in Georgia, consensual age for sex is 16. He said that he didn't think the 16-year-old victims in this case who made the allegations, he said he didn't think that they were of sound mind to be involved with Bishop Long in a constructive, healthy manner. But the legal, in terms of legality, the legal age is 16 in Georgia.
Which, in that case, I mean, which makes it all the more disturbing, because it sounds to me that with the push to lower the age of consent, I guess I just see this work, his book, to just be very dangerous in light of, and I guess I should have asked the question before, but I would be curious to know his thoughts on Aaliyah. And no, I'm sorry, not Aaliyah, but R. Kelly and the videotape.
He mentions it in his book. He brings it up, but he brings it up within the context of black female comedians making jokes about this. Cheryl Underwood, Adele Gibbons, and it's not just these two. I mean, I heard a lot of black comedians make jokes about the R. Kelly situation. So it's not presented as R. Kelly did something that is unacceptable, reprehensible. It's just presented as, fodder for jokes and other black people. He's just referencing black females making jokes about how they, too, have an appetite for 15, 16, 17-year-olds. Pedophilia.
Exactly. I found that disturbing, too. And Cheryl Underwood is someone... It doesn't shock me anymore, because I know to expect her to say things that are indecent, repulsive. I see her on television 9 times out of 10. I'm going to turn the channel as soon as I see her face.
I'm sorry.
And also the whole thing about Wanda Sykes talking about her white partner. I don't see that as a break from patriarchy, because in this culture, it seems to me that a lot of men get off on seeing 2 women together. That amuses them. Some of them get turned on by it. I don't understand how that's breaking the structure of patriarchy.
It's gay. I mean, once he made the comment that racism was going to be here, forever. I mean, that for me just solidified that he was defeated.
That's why I had to ask, had he ever been in a sexual relationship with a white person?
also found it was very interesting. He said he was influenced by Notorious B.I.G., Tupac, and DMX. Got that photo Ready to Die. Just, bam. I mean, you talk about defeated. That's who your influence is. Notorious B.I.G., Ready to Die, murdered before the age of 30. Tupac Shakur also murdered before the age of 30. And DMX, someone who is, I think, famous for rapping and referencing himself as a dog. There you go.
Have any of the other callers on the line, have you had a chance to check out Dr. Baruti's The Sex Imperative?
I have not yet,
yes,
but I
have.
Yeah.
No, I haven't yet, but it's definitely on my list.
I'm sorry.
An investor, she's on the line now. I just got it. She mailed me a copy. Thank you, Khadijah. I'm excited to dig through it.
Man, I didn't know you didn't have one, Gus. I would have sent you a copy. I purchased the book off of Dr. Baruti's site after just reading. I mean, the front cover is a work of art in and of itself for those that haven't seen it, because whoever his artist is, and maybe it was himself, the cover itself lists a range of words that involve sex in some form, shape, or fashion. And I'm no sex expert, but I was kind of surprised at the number of words that I had no idea what they meant. And he, throughout the book, he explores each and every one of these words and the origins and where they come from. And as I'm hearing the one professor basically write a license to liberate everyone sexually, and then I go back and I read Dr. Baruti's book, and Dr. Baruti outlines the total objective and goal of this sexual liberation. I would implore everyone that can get their hands on it to check it out. I mean, it is really a very thorough treatise on the subject of sex. I never could have imagined the depravity that the European mindset has outlined. I mean, I understand the history of what they've done to us and created, as Mr. Fuller states, as monstrosities. But to hear him compare Dr. Martin Luther King to basically sexual deviance, I like Nero. I mean, it took everything in me to. I almost really didn't want to make any comments to him, because I thought he was, quite frankly, a little off his rocker.
He was on CNN. I want you all to keep that in mind. Whatever your opinion is, he was on CNN 3 times last weekend, has an article on CNN right now, and was on Good Morning America this week. Keep that in mind. Social engineering. Dr. Baruti will be back this month. We might do Sex Imperative again now that I have the book. Everybody who's listening to this program, you should go back and make sure you listen to that broadcast with Dr. Judith Reisman. He referenced that Kinsey report in his book. Go back and listen to what she had to say about that report and how that report influenced all kinds of sexual deviance. She said that report helped kick off the social engineering of sexual deviance, reduced the age of sexual consent, legalized abortion, homosexuality, pedophilia. Check out that broadcast with Dr. Judith Reisman. It was the end of September, last program we did in September. I think some of you all heard that broadcast, yes?
Yes.
Oh, I did. Well, I thought it was an incredible broadcast and one of the most important broadcasts you've ever done.
Yeah, I thought it was very constructive. It was just so disturbing to me that he was telling Justice that when she gets older, Lil Kim should be someone that she looks to as a powerful woman. Lil Kim has had her nose chopped up and changed. I think she's bleached or lightened her skin. She has gotten breast implants and altered her body. From everything I know, it seems to me like she most certainly is under the system of patriarchy. The only thing I could think of that someone might be able to point to and say that's empowering is I think she has her own record label. I think she does. But I just can't see. When he said a powerful woman, I think of my grandmother, my aunts, the women who raised me, the women who could hold a house together, nurture, raise decent people. I don't think of someone with their legs spread open who's on MTV and is selling records and talking about her vagina is the magic box or something like that. It just doesn't register with me.
Lil Kim
That's because you have a bourgeois attitude.
That's right.
Like I said,
Lil Kim
thank God for that.
Lil Kim has stated that her insecurities and things that she's done and some of the reasons why she's done it, that she does a lot of things because she feels black men like women with European features and, when she made that line in a song about, drinking babies and how men reacted to it, how she said it, but she was very almost scared and ashamed of what she said. I mean, no, Lil Kim is not empowered. Nope.
Yeah, because to me, being powerful means you accept yourself outside of other people's definitions or requirements. At least that's one aspect of it.
Yeah, see, the problem I have with this whole, this whole sexual liberation nonsense, hey, I should be able to rape you, and if you can't deal with that, that means you're just not liberated sexually. You should be able to deal with anything that comes at you sexually. So I should be able to do anything to you. That's nonsense. And as far as this whole Victorian age thing he brought up, so is bathing. That goes way back. But I'm not going to stop doing it, no matter what they say. Because, white people don't like to bathe. I've had a white person tell me they only bathe every 3 days. I said, man, that's on you.
I agree with Gus. If being a prude means being against this stuff, I think I'm going to join that line, man.
Absolutely.
Across the board, males, females, everybody. If this is what sexual liberation is going to look like, just look at those photos as they scroll across for this program. If this is what sexual liberation is going to look like, R. Kelly, Bishop Long, someone just posted on my Facebook page, some black male just went to jail for having fathering 23 different children with 14 different females. If this is what sexual liberation is going to look like, let's all be Victorian, let's all be prudes until racism, white supremacy has been taken care of, and then we can think about, if we want to be more, quote-unquote, sexually liberated after all this is done. But in the meantime, in between time, this is working hard for racist white supremacists. I actually want to take a moment because I had the pleasure to speak with Mr. Fuller about all this yesterday, and I'm just going to play a portion of what he said, but it's relevant and it will help balance out some of the folly that is still ringing in my head from Professor Shayne Lee. And I think for black males, I think at this point we've had a lot of black people who are professors at institutions. I think it should just be assumed if you are a professor, as long as the system of racism, white supremacy exists, if you are in any way, shape, or form a black person and white people allow you to participate in academia, you are supporting racism, white supremacy. That should just be assumed. If you're a black person in that, the burden of proof should be on that black person to demonstrate that they're not. I think you can evaluate from the folks that have come through here. And just cherry on top, Shayne Lee, he got his PhD from Northwestern, right where Cheryl Chutis is. I'm going to take a hot second to play that Mr. Fuller clip, and then if you all want to share anything, we still got 20 minutes. I'm going to play the Mr. Fuller clip, and hopefully it will be clear. If you all can keep the background noise down so folks can hear this, that would be great. But this is Mr. Fuller from yesterday, sharing his view on the Bishop Eddie Long situation.
Yeah, they're sending a message to all the black preachers out there with this Bishop Long thing. Be forewarned. Just like we are going to destroy him, do the same thing to you.
Do you think included in that message they also said you better get on board supporting this homosexual activity?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because we know that your church is real well. You know? And a lot of you ministers are into it. So you're hypocrites, and we know how to expose you. So all you big-time ministers with these, big-time churches and whatnot, if it's not you, it's somebody on your staff, or it's your sons, or somebody like that, or your deacon board, then we will show you to be the hypocrites that you are, which will destroy your church. And y'all want to keep riding around in these fancy cars and whatnot, you better back off. Minister's not that way, his son is. Because we saw to it when you sent him to that fancy boys' school. See, they think way ahead. Now, your son is going to succeed you in the ministry, or your daughter. And we already know she's a lesbian because we saw to it that she got in that lesbian school. They did a job on her, the white girls. So now she's, going to be there. I mean, as one of the successors in your church. Oh, yeah. And talking against homosexuality. Oh, no. No, you're not. Because that's where we're taking all of these black people all over the world. They've already pulled it off in South Africa and made it a law. So Mandela did all his work for nothing. They're going to take all them strong Zulu tribesmen and whatnot and make females out of them. See, homosexuality is legal in South Africa. Mm-hmm. But they only did it after Mandela became president. See, we cut the ground out from under you. We're going to cause chaos, So you haven't done nothing. See, black males all back as I can remember. I mean, that's why we use the term man more than anybody. Hey, what's up, man? Come on, man. Hey, man. What's happening? Hey, that's my man. That's that need to be a man. But we never were allowed to be one. So all day long, that's what we're saying. But we're beginning to say it less and less now. Why? Well, be a female. Give up on being a man. It's easier.
context of white supremacy snippet from conversation I was able to have with Mr. Fuller yesterday. And I just want to point out for the record, Professor Shayne Lee, he's writing saying, I'm doing this feminist work, not writing from the perspective of a victim of white supremacy, attempting to combat, destroy the global enterprise of white supremacy. He's writing from the feminist perspective.
And that was why I had to ask the question, is it normal for individuals to undermine their own, station in life? Why would a heterosexual want to do anything from a feminist perspective, whether he be male or she be female, doesn't compute.
Since we have 13, I'm going to bow out early and concede the last few minutes of the program, but I did want to make sure I get out. We'll be back tomorrow. Tomorrow we will have Dr. Nancy Turner Banks, author of AIDS, Opium, Diamonds, and Empire, the Deadly Virus of International Greed. She is a black female. Should be very interesting. It'll be tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, and 4 p.m. Pacific. This was a suggestion from Mr. Nero, so if you don't like the program, you can fuss at him. It should be constructive, though. I'm thinking she will be much less confused than Professor Shayne Lee. And she got me a book, so I'm thrilled all the way around, expand my library. But, yeah, that's tomorrow, Monday, October 4th. Dr. Nancy Banks should be constructive. Program on Tuesday as well. Also, make sure you check the archives. Children of Southampton, Sister Nefertari, and Irritated Genie. They did a program today sharing their views on what happened with Bishop Eddie Long. Archives should be on Sister Nefertari's website, ourcause.com, OURKOS.com. It might not be up today, but if you check tomorrow, the archive should be up so you can check out that program. If you don't see it, just keep going back. The website again, ourcause, OURKOS.com, and just click Radio Show Archives, and you'll see it. It'll be the most recent program once they post it. Support Back of the Buses blog, nonwhitealliance.wordpress.com. Support Crease as well, crease7.wordpress.com. Thank all of the investors. Got Shadow, he's on the line now, got an investment. Mr. Nero's stimulus package had Marsha, I don't want to do the names. Ms. Washington, we'll leave it at that. Ms. Washington, thank you as well. Thank you for investing. I'm trying to get to D.C. in February. If you think the program is constructive, please invest. That would be much appreciated. If you don't think the program is constructive, don't waste your time here, please. Let's see, did I have anything else? I got Sex Imperative, but I do not have Homosexuality and the Effeminization of African Males. If anybody would like to get Gus that book, that would be great. I have a Gus wish list at Amazon.com. You can go there and check out books that I would like. If anybody would like to invest that way and send a book, that would be great. I would definitely like a copy of Homosexuality and the Effeminization of African Males. We're going to do a part 2, probably, to both of those books. Sex Imperative as well with Dr. Baruti. As I said, he'll be back at the end of the month. So there you go. That would be helpful. And, yeah, I think that'll do it. I'll hush, and anything you all, we have 10 minutes left, so anything you all would like to get out in the last 10 minutes, feel free.
818, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
What's the name of your blog? Do you have one?
EbonyNewsChannel.blogspot.com.
Ebony News Channel. I'm sorry, one more time.
EbonyNewsChannel.blogspot.com.
Thank you.
It's linked on the page, on Gus's page. Hey, you all,
okay.
I just wanted to say regarding the upcoming Tyler Perry movie, Colored Girls, at the end of the rainbow, whatever, suicide, I came across this really hot actor. He's a black male. His name is Omari Hutchinson, I think, or Omari Hardwick. That's his name. He's in the movie. I caught an interview of him on YouTube yesterday. Unfortunately, he's playing a homosexual male who's in a relationship with one of the black females. Oh, with Janet Jackson in the movie. So look for that, another effeminized black male on the so-called down low in the movie. That's what the role that he's playing.
You're telling me the one male in the movie is gay?
No, there's more than one male in the movie. There's a bunch of black men who are all seemingly to blame for the problems of the black females, but the one who's playing Janet Jackson's love interest, he's playing a gay male in the movie.
Oh, okay.
He's married to her, I believe, or in a relationship with her, but a homosexual, and I suppose she doesn't know it, and I guess that's going to be the source of the problem there.
Oh, great.
So, yeah, another movie with the black male who is homosexual, a feminized black male.
And this is his coming out role? This is his first movie?
No, he's actually in a blue something, a TV show, Blue something, I can't think of it.
Okay,
I think his name is...
Oh, is that Dark Blue?
Yes.
That guy?
Yes. Take the best looking ones and feminize them. I said, dang. I was like, no. Yes, you can look for an interview on YouTube with him, and where they're discussing that.
Well, it's probably pretty liberating too.
Seems like the more masculine the man appears, the more they want to feminize him.
Yep.
Once again, I would just like to reiterate investing in the cows on a monthly basis. Whatever you can do to contribute to the show, to the people who are downloading the archive, as well as listening live. Just try to please make an effort to contribute monthly to the cows and any other programming you feel is constructive.
Noted suggestion. Does anyone know why Cree removed a lot of her archive shows?
I didn't know she had removed anything. I didn't even know you could do that. You could actually remove what you want.
You can take everything down if you want. I thought about taking down all the programs for the blackout, but yeah, you can. I think she left 3 up. I think she left the programs with Mr. Fuller and her most recent program. That's why I told you all, download the shows. If you think any of the programs that you think are constructive, you should download them because there's no guarantee that they will be, readily available at any time. I hope if you missed out on downloading some of her content, that should be a warning. So any of the programs that you think are constructive, that you have an opportunity to download, you should do so because they could disappear at any time.
Thus, what is the reason you thought about taking the blackout shows down?
Because I felt like, wow, that could be a set that could be sold to make some money.
Okay.
Those, I don't know how many, I think it was 10 programs from there. And just because, I'm kind of not that cool of a person, but obviously I did not do it.
All the more reason why we should be investing, contributing as much as we can to shows that we feel are constructive and help improve the quality of our lives in some way, some capacity. We got to put our money where our mouth is.
Gus, didn't you say you got about 500 listens a day or something like that?
During the blackout, it was pretty explosive. Like we were putting up. I don't remember exactly what it was per day, but it was in the ballpark. I think pretty much all of those programs have generated I think all of those programs have generated over 500 listens, which is pretty high for programs that didn't really air that long ago. So, yeah, they were. And we've kept a lot of those listeners. It hasn't really dropped off. The only drop has been because I'm not doing shows as often as I was during the blackout, but we kept a lot of those listeners. The numbers have stayed pretty high. So, you know, it was a good decision, it looks like. Justice, if you're here, do you want to give your email? Scott, Justice, you want to give me your email?
Yeah, sure. justice.asap@yahoo.com. Again, justice.asap@yahoo.com. And thanks for everybody calling in. Those were nice views.
No, thank you, Justice. Very excellent questions today. I mean, you did excellent, as always.
Agreed.
Yes, Justice. Excellent questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, Justice, I'm jealous. I want your parents.
We have 3 minutes left. Or 2 minutes.
Now that you've got your MacBook Pro, you can make some excellent videos to go on your YouTube channel.
That's the plan. I have it linked. It's one of my favorites on my browser, the YouTube page that 818 constructed for the cows. I was just thinking the same thing over the weekend. I was like, oh, I got to make some videos to put on the page. So yeah, let me get my act together and figure. I started trying to play with iMovie over the past week. So yeah, as soon as I figure it out a little bit more, I will get that done.
Yep, I would do portions of the show and redirect people back to the show page to listen to the full episode. I would do the highlights because otherwise you'll spend tons of time editing. You'll get more traffic to your page if you redirect.
Can I make a suggestion, Gus, for a show?
Got to do it quick.
Just real quick, I'm wondering, have you thought about maybe doing a show where you just produce clips of some of the white people who've come on your